On today's episode of Hershey's Garage, this is a 1973 Yamaha AT3 125 that a buddy of mine gave to me about a year ago. I haven't had time to get the thing running yet, or mess with it at all really, it's just been sitting. But I figured this would be a really cool bike to start on the channel and show you guys how to make something run. It's been sitting forever. This bike's probably been sitting at least 30 years at my buddy's property. When I found the bike, the gas tank, the seat, and the rear wheel were all off the bike. It was just kind of a chassis sitting there, and I walked all around his property to find the gas tank and seat and everything. I wasn't even sure if they were actually for this bike when I found them. I just kind of had a hunch that they were, and as you can see, that is the correct gas tank and the correct seat and even the correct rear wheel for this bike. So I was really happy that the parts that I found laying on the ground everywhere were actually for this bike. So everything is just sitting on there at the moment just for looks. I have to still buy some parts to be able to put things on properly, but I think it's a really cool looking vintage bike, and I'd like to get it going. And it was an enduro that someone made into a motocross style looking bike, but this bike should have speedometer, tach, turn signals, headlights, all that kind of stuff. So I may try and find them and make it street legal again. It'd be pretty fun to play around with up here. So I'll show you first. Well, I'll show you how to find spark, because I don't even know if this bike has spark. So let's start by taking the seat off it and the gas tank off. So this bike, it's interesting. It has two spark plugs. The only thing I can think of is back in the day, the old bikes were known for fouling plugs. So I guess that's why Yamaha did that. So maybe you'd have one spark plug that would be good. It's a kind of a bummer. It's missing the spark plug wire from the coil, but for what I'm doing today, it's not going to matter. So this is a spark plug tester. These are really handy. Instead of pulling a spark plug out of the cylinder and checking for spark that way, you just put one end of the boot on the spark plug and the other end on the coil. And this is a little light in here, and the light will flash any time it sparks. So we'll stick this inside the coil, and then we'll just put the spark plug boot on the plug. Okay, now that we've got the spark tester in place, we're going to hook up a battery. I'm just going to use my cat jumper box because that's the easiest thing to do. So hook this up to the positive cable, and then hook this up to the ground cable, and then flip the switch on. Now it's energized, so let's test it. As you can see, it's got the lights lighting up, so that means it's got spark. So I learned in high school auto shop you need to have fuel, air, and spark for an engine to run. So we've got spark, so that's the first step. So now I'm going to work on pulling the carburetor off because it's full of dirt. So we're going to have to clean that and get that going next. Alright, let's get the jumper off of here. Don't need that now. And we don't need this stuff. And then let's work on pulling the carburetor off. Take that silly looking air filter off of here. And then unscrew the throttle slide. Hopefully I can find the correct stock air cleaner set up for this bike. Okay, and then should just be the 4 bolts holding it onto the cylinder head. Okay, they're 10 millimeter. I got my street motorcycle license on a 1971 Honda SL 125 that a buddy owned. That was a fun bike to learn how to ride street on. Alright, and there's the carburetor off. Actually, it looks pretty clean inside. That's crazy. I know earlier when I was looking, because the gas tank wasn't on this bike, so the main fuel port was all plugged up with dirt, so I knew right away we weren't going to be firing it up today, so still need to take the float bowl off and see what it looks like inside there, because it's probably got tons of dirt in there, so no reason to run that right into the engine. I mean, everything looks pretty clean, so that's good. Okay, here I have the carburetor off the bike. You can see it's pretty dirty and gross, so let's try and scrub off the majority of this dirt first before I take it apart and put it in the ultrasonic cleaner. So this is just some Dawn power wash. This stuff usually works pretty darn good for cutting through dirt and grease. And this is just an old toothbrush I always use for scrubbing on stuff. Rinse it and see what that did. Take the majority of the dirt off. Doesn't need to be perfect. The ultrasonic usually does a very good job of working all this stuff off the carburetor, but it helps to not put a bunch of dirt in there from the get-go. So scrub it a little more. It's interesting, this carburetor is painted black from the factory, I guess. I haven't really seen a motorcycle with a painted carburetor. Ultrasonic probably is going to strip a lot of the paint off too. Okay, that looks pretty good. So normally when I work on carburetors, I don't have the best memory at times, so I like to take some pictures of where the screws and jets and everything were on the carburetor before I start taking things apart, just so I have a good reference to go back to afterwards. So let's pop these hoses off. Okay, and then start pulling it apart. Take the choke out. Pull this screw Well, be interesting to see what this thing looks like inside. It's actually a lot cleaner than I thought, but this was completely packed full of dirt when I first looked at everything, so I think it needs to all come apart and get cleaned just to be safe. Okay. That's pretty disgusting. So, fuel bowl may just be full of dirt. And not drop one of these screws down the sink. That would suck. I don't know if many of you have owned an ultrasonic cleaner, but this is the first one I've owned, and it's the only way to do motorcycle carburetors for sure. I don't mess with car ones too often, but I would definitely use that for a car too if it was all plugged up. It sure does a good job getting in everything. Yeah, it's pretty gross. So let's get that cleaned up a little better before I take it apart farther. Better. Yeah, that's the majority of dirt's out of there. It's just that varnish kind of stuff that gets left behind. But that's what the ultrasonic's good for, cleaning that stuff out. So that's good enough to go in. Okay, let's pull the float pin out. Here's the float. A little dirty in there. That's the float needle. That looks clean. I'm not going to put that in. It's so small. Take the little gasket off here too to be safe. This can go ahead and get tossed in. I don't know if I can save the gasket on this. Might not be available anymore. There, I was able to save it, so that's good. Alright. This out. It's dirty. So you can see it's dirty. It's seen worse, but not great either. So, alright. Okay, take this little piece out of here. Take a picture just in case. I don't remember where that little thing goes. Small little jet. Alright, I think the carburetor stripped. Yeah, I don't see any jets or needles in here. Normally I have a little wire basket I put the small stuff in, but I couldn't find it from the last time I used this, so I just have this cam lid. I think that's gonna work fine. So anything that's smaller, I like to put it in there just so it doesn't fall. There's a little drain that has small holes, so it'd be bad if those happen to find their way in there and I couldn't get them out. Alright. Not too much really on this carburetor. Ultrasonic. You use this solution. I bought this one on Amazon. It takes 1 quart of solution and then the rest is just all water. buy a new gallon pretty soon. Probably about the last that I have. Kinda weird, looks like antifreeze. And then the rest is just about 5 quarts of water is what it holds. It's a smaller carburetor, so I don't probably need to fill it to the top like I usually do. That should be enough. It'll be a little more potent than usual. Okay, so all you do is, you can see it's got a basket to hold parts. So just toss your parts in here. And I throw that float in there, it'll clean it up better too. And then we're gonna do it like this with these smaller guys. And they can sit at the bottom. That should be about it. The rest of this stuff doesn't really need to be cleaned out. So that's everything in there. And I already have it set at, that's the hottest temperature it goes up to, and that's the longest time it'll let you run it for. So we're just gonna set, this is the heating switch, which it'll start the heater and get it going. And then the next one is just the cleaning switch, which runs the process. So I like to generally, I'll run it like 5 or 6 times and really let it work everything through, and I'll move stuff around, and I had the best luck doing that. If you run it just once, it'll never get stuff clean enough. So you can buy these at Harbor Freight. This is the bigger one. I think I paid about 100 to 120 bucks for this one, but it's an awesome tool if you have motorcycles or stuff like that. And we're gonna run this a bunch, and then I'll show you the end process, and I'll show you how to reassemble it too. Okay, now I got the carburetor ready to go back on the bike, so let's put it back on. The carburetor's all tightened up. Now we're going to put the slide back in. And when you put a slide in a motorcycle carburetor, you need to always look at the notches and then find the pins inside the body and make sure you have it in the right spot. In case you don't know, the slide is what, when you turn the throttle, makes it have more gas or less gas. So now that's back in. What I'm going to do is just put this hose on and put gas in the fuel bowl, and then we'll fire it up. I found this tractor spark plug wire in a box of tractor parts I had. So I was able to stick that on the coil, and now I at least have a spark plug wire for the bike, and eventually I'll cut it to the right length. Alright, we need to put the battery jumper back on. Hopefully this works. Well, I don't have any gas in the fuel bowl. Try poking a hole in the bottle. See if that helps. Well, there's gas in there now. There's one try. Well, that's pretty cool. It runs. So I guess job well done and accomplished. So check that off the list. At least the bike runs. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. I have a lot more vintage bikes and cars and trucks, so like and subscribe.